Okay, now we got the hole drilled, and you can see I've got protective painter's tape to protect the face as we work on this. Also, I now have, this is a wood burning iron, basically like a soldering iron, only it comes with special tips. You can see this nice wicked X-Acto knife tip on this wood burning tool. You can get these at Michael's or any hobby shop. And what we're going to do now is use it to cut the hole, cut away the plastic that we need to cut away so that we can fit the sensor in there. So you can see we don't need to cut too much. We get a focus here. Definitely don't want to push hard with this wicked thing. Just want to let it cut through. As you can see, I got to be careful because I'm starting to burn other pieces here. Okay, so now we've cut out that little notch. Let's see how this is going to work. And looks perfect. So, looks perfect. Now the connector is going to come off this side here, so we're going to have to take that thing out as well. Not only does it fit well, but it's also going to plug the connector onto it. Snaps nice in place. And now you can see what we have. Pretty good shape there. Now we need to feed these wires down into the other cavity so that we can bring them out. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill a hole in this plate, and then we're also going to drill a hole below or above this other connector, kind of by this screw, to bring the sensor cable out. Okay, so now you can see I've got the speakers back in and held in place with these screws. Here's our sensor. Now there's one thing we have to be careful with on this sensor. You can see that it's not aimed straight ahead if you just lay it in there like that. It's pointed in a bad direction. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to kind of push the sensor back in, see, push the sensor back so that there's a gap right in here, and then we're going to have to tie this end down close to the plastic. So that'll get the sensor pointed as straight out as we possibly can do. So we're going to have to figure out how to do that. I'm thinking some sort of rubber, piece of rubber in here to hold this back. And then as far as holding this down, I might have to build some sort of an arm off from these speaker supports to kind of brace that in like that. So that's what we're going to do next. Don't really want to drill any holes in here because it would show up on the face of the robot, so we're going to have to do everything from the inside. Don't really want to glue it either, although that's a possibility, but then if the sensor ever gets damaged, it'd be very hard to replace. So this is where a lot of creativity comes in. This is where you're going to go through your junk drawers and find a piece of metal that'll do this or fit that, and that's how we're going to make it work. Okay, well that wasn't so bad. So you can see what I did here. I added this metal bracket, which I found in my junk drawer of metal pieces, along with screwed it down onto the speaker brackets, and so that's kind of holding this connector firmly in place here. And then you can see I added this little rubber piece underneath this edge of the sensor, and so that's holding it out. So I will probably epoxy this little rubber piece in because it's not in very well, and then if I ever need to replace the sensor, I'll be able to do that. Another thing next then is that we need to bring the cable through. One thing you can see I've done here is I didn't use this green wire like I'd planned for the other ground. Well, I think that I'm glad I did that, because what I'll be able to do is once we feed it through here, I'll be able to connect it to the hot side of the LED, and we'll be able to bring the LED signal back down to the Raspberry Pi on that green wire. So a little bit of an oversight on the LED, but luckily this paid off and we'll be able to get the LED as well. Alright, so our little rubber piece there is nice and solidly in place with some epoxy glue. And now we need to do a little more plastic trimming. As you can tell, we did quite a bit of damage right down inside there. Now we need to do some more damage here, because this is going to put too much pressure against the sensor board. So cut it right here. And then come out to the side here and take it off. Trying not to slice my thumb. So we've done that. We're ready to put this back on, but one thing I want to do first is I want to get in the wires for this LED, so you can see how the LED is fastened in here, and these red and black wires are coming off from there. So we are going to cut those away from the circuit board so that we can get control of it, like this, leaving a little bit on there so we know which is black and which is red in case we want to hook it back up again. And now we need to put a hole in this thing, this plate, to feed the wires through. So that's what we'll do next. Okay, now we have a hole here. You can see that we were able to find a spot where we didn't have to do too much damage. And I now have a hole here in the back of the robot too, right above the power port. So we are going to see if we can feed this through. Here. And then here. So there we go. Looking good. Let's see if we can put this plate back on. And there we go. We did it. Looks like the sensor's still in good shape. So I'll put the screws back in and see where that goes. Okay, this part is about wiring up the LED. You can see I have the two leads from the LED right here, and I have cut off the green striped and green wire from the sensor. There are plenty of grounds going to the sensor, so we'll just use one of the other ones, and we'll wire the LED up to these. Also, I've got a couple of pieces of shrink tubing, so putting the shrink tubing on the wire first. Then we're going to tin the leads on the wires, solder them together, put the shrink tubing back on, and wrap it up. Okay, we're almost done now. The LED is wired up. The sensor is wired up. One last thing we're going to do. One last thing here is we're going to put a wire tie around this cable to prevent it from being pulled too far out and avoid any strain on the wires. That'd be a bad idea to do that with this too. This is always such a pain in falling out. Let's see if we can do it with the audio cable too. Okay, that will help the cable from being jerked out. Give it a little stopper there. And we don't want to damage that capacitor, so we're going to just put this up here, put that in there, and we're going to take our little bunny rabbit, put her back together. Trying not to crunch any of the wires. And I'm crunching the wires. And there we go. She's back together. And this is our cable connection. So got nice and long there. So put the screws back in. We'll take the tape off and see how she looks. And here we go. Doesn't look too bad. Looks like it might be pointing down a little bit. I think it looks pretty good, and it doesn't look too disturbing either, so that's a good thing. And then we'll run this over to the Pi and see how it works.